Okay, it is 9:30, and so we're going to go ahead and start right on time. Thank you for those of you joining us to the Impact Group Tips on Social Media webinar. We have some guests I would like to introduce and have them talk a little bit about themselves. First of all, we have Jeff Stanton, the Superintendent of Buckeye Local Schools. Jeff, you'd like to say hello, tell a little bit about your background?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Good morning. Thanks for having me. Jeff Stanton, Superintendent, Buckeye Local Schools in Medina County. New superintendent here in Buckeye, started in August. Thrilled to be here. It's been a wonderful first few months, and we're working with the Impact Group and been very happy with the work. Real happy to be here. Longtime administrator in Northeast Ohio, and as I said, just recently in Buckeye, and so far so good.
Thank you, Jeff, for joining us today. And one of the reasons why Jeff is here is because of his efforts to set the tone for social media within the school district. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. Rory Wilson, one of our account leads. Rory, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I am, as Phil said, Rory Wilson. I'm an account lead with the Impact Group. I work primarily with K-12 schools, although a lot of the discussion that we have today will be framed through the lens of a school. A lot of these tips about social media are applicable to other industries as well. I do have a background in corporate communications and also in advertising. So social media is really near and dear to my heart. And that's not just because I'm a millennial and I use it. It's because I know just how powerful it can be as a tool in your communications arsenal. So I'm really excited to be able to share some examples of how you can really harness social media to tell your story. And I'm really excited that Jeff is here because although he's very humble about his support for social media in Buckeye, we've been able to do just that. We've really been able to harness it and use it to tell the important story that they have to tell.
Thank you, Rory. And I'm Phil Herman. I'm a partner at the Impact Group. I've been with the Impact Group for almost 2 years now. My entire career up until joining the Impact Group was in public education. So I was a teacher, a principal, a director of human resources, an assistant superintendent, and for 11 years a superintendent. And my experiences with social media were primarily as a superintendent, and I will share a few of those examples as we talk today. This webinar is a 30-minute conversation on social media tips, and so we will look at Buckeye as an example and hear some of Jeff's perspectives on that. And Rory's also going to share some of those tips as we go through, and then we'll look at them in practice. As we think about social media, we begin to jump in and talk about social media. We need to take just one step back before we get into the tips. And that's to think about how we approach communication at the Impact Group through strategic communications model. Rory, you want to talk just a little bit about that model because it does frame how we approach social media.
Sure. So I mentioned a little bit ago that social media can be a powerful tool in your communications arsenal. So when we look at strategic communications, we're talking about a specialized approach to sharing the information that you want to share by using all of the tools in your communications arsenal. So what we're saying is we want to be able to communicate the best message through the correct channels to the right people at the right time. So, in talking about strategic communications, we can kind of break it down into 3 kind of key components, and those would be your priorities, your objectives, and then your strategies for sharing that information. So when we talk about your priorities, we're talking about your goals. What are the most important things that you want to accomplish with your communications? And then in terms of your objectives, we look at who, what, how much, and when. So by identifying your audience and determining your key messages that you want to share with them, looking at what benchmarks will make communicating those messages successful, and then when, what's the timing? Are your priorities ongoing? Are they within a set time frame? How can we then use those tools to share those messages in a timely manner. So then when we talk about strategies, we're looking at setting specific tasks, looking at those available platforms. So in this case, we're going to talk a lot about social media as a strategy or a tool, but there are many others that may be used, such as email or a newsletter, or a vast variety. Could be the media. Lots of different areas that we can use as strategies to communicate those messages. But today we're going to focus on social media.
Thank you, Rory. That's a great explanation. And so we don't view social media as social media for social media's sake. We don't approach it that way. We don't encourage anyone else to approach it that way. Social media, as Rory said, is a strategy that helps us fulfill greater communication priorities and meet those priorities and communicate those priorities. What are some of those communication priorities for Buckeye? I know, Rory, you and Jeff have been working closely on some of those priorities for this year. Jeff, do you have any priorities you've been focusing on?
Sure. Thanks, Phil. Well, first, I want to circle back to something Rory said. She called me humble. And if there's anybody on this webinar that knows me, that's the first time in my life I've ever been called humble. So thank you very much. That was all right. I'm gonna remember that one. But from a social media perspective, you guys describe it as a powerful tool. And I hearken back to my time as a high school principal. I was a high school principal for 10 years. And I used along with, my team and people that work with me, we used social media when I was a high school principal to really engage with the student body. And we were doing a lot of things on Facebook, but we were doing a lot of things on Twitter. And it was easy to have 1,600 followers because I had 1,600 students that were, in the school that I worked as the high school principal. And then I became an HR director for 5 years. And truthfully, I wasn't using social media very much as an HR director, right? Then as I came into this role, although I'm familiar with Buckeye, I'm not from Buckeye. So I needed to purposefully find a way to connect with the community. And that's a continual connection for me. So when I first met with the Impact Group, I talked about that. My priority was, how was I going to connect with the community, and how can I use social media to help me do that? So that was where I was purposeful in, let's use social media for the students, but let's also use social media as a tool for our parents, for the community, as they get to know the new superintendent. And, hopefully we've had some success in those areas in the short time I've been here.
Great. Thank you. Rory, what are some of the other priorities that we've been focusing on for Buckeye or other school districts? What are some examples of those priorities that they have for communication strategies?
Sure. But before I talk about those, I do want to also mention the willingness to get out and put yourself out there on social media is sometimes a challenge. So it was really exciting for me as a communications professional to meet, with Jeff and hear him say, this is a place that I want to be. If there are any other superintendents or administrators out there in the audience, sometimes it's hard to say, I want to be out there on social media, whether that's I want to be photographed and put on social media, or I want to have my own, Twitter handle or whatever it is. Sometimes that's a hard leap to make, but it's a lot easier than you think, and it can be really powerful. So kudos to Jeff for his enthusiasm for that. Because really that helps set the tone for your whole staff, and it helps set the tone for the way that we can use social media. But to get back to your question, Phil, some other areas that we've used social media in a really strategic way in Buckeye Local Schools is, number one, just sharing the good things that are happening within each of the school buildings throughout the district. And that's something that, any organization, that's something that you really want to prioritize, is just sharing what's happening, sharing the things that maybe a parent or a grandparent or somebody else in the community might not know about because they're not in the building every day. But we can use social media to be able to share that through a photo. What's something awesome that the 5th grade art students did? Just sharing those little tidbits, snapshots of things that are going on within a building is a really important priority. We've also had a couple of other a little bit more specific priorities that we've been really able to use social media for. One, engaging the community regarding facilities. We are able to use social media to share a survey and help get feedback. We want to use social media as an engaging tool, and it's a good place to share links, to get people involved, to get the word out. And then we were also able to use it to share information about different hiring information, positions that are open, ways to get employees recruited to the district.
Thanks, Rory. So, as you talk about promoting the district, and many times organizations or school districts really that is one of their communication priorities. And so we're trying to give all of you participants a feeling for what are some of these priorities, and promoting the good work in your organization or in your schools is often a major component of the purpose of social media, and it aligns to one of your communication priorities of helping people understand what is happening within your district. Jeff talked about kind of getting started and utilizing Twitter on social media. That's really where I became first engaged in social media heavily as well too in a professional organization. Was around 2008. If you remember that Waiting for Superman was out there, and there was all the questions about public education and Senate Bill 5, if any of you are thinking back to these times, and public education was under attack. And I thought to myself, I'm seeing these incredible things happening within our schools every single day. And I just wanted to tell that story. That was my motivation to start using social media, was to begin sharing that within our regular work every day, there are stories unfolding of adults having meaningful impact on the lives of students, and how can we help share that? And that's still a primary component when we think about social media. You've heard a couple tips already. Make sure you align social media to your priorities, to your communication priorities. Be willing to put yourself out there. And now Rory's giving some examples of some of the priorities. Let's start to get into some of those tips in terms of what to share. One of those things that we were talking about, promoting your district, the incredible thing is how do we share celebrations of students and staff? What are some examples that we have seen in Buckeye or in other schools? Jeff, you want to talk about how you celebrate students and staff through social media?
Yeah, absolutely, Phil. So that's actually been really easy. And Rory mentioned something before about the work that it takes. I'll be honest with you, I was a little concerned that this increase of social media use was going to increase a workload for me. It did a little bit, but it certainly wasn't out of line in any way, shape, or form. What we learned very quickly is what do our parents want to know? What do our community want to know? We have great teachers here. We have great staff. Our parents want to know the story, right? They want to see pictures of their kids. They probably want less words and more visuals. I've certainly learned that. So as you're walking around the district, it's so easy just to take pictures of kids and teachers and kids in the cafeteria and kids in their athletic events, and find a way to get that to the community. And the feedback from the community has been, we want more of that. Less words and more pictures, right? So it was pretty easy to do. I also have some amazing people that work with us, our building principals in particular, and our central office people that also took this challenge on themselves. And they're now walking around the district, taking pictures wherever we can put it and putting into a shared drive, and we can get them out to Rory and she can put them out there for us. That's been kind of neat to have our administrators as well as our central office administrators engage in this as well. But pictures of kids, less words, tell the story of the staff that works here. That's what the community wanted to hear, and that's what the community is responding to very favorably.
Rory, let's talk a little bit about that in terms of what to share, celebrations of students and staff. Jeff brought up pictures. Let's talk about the role of pictures and video as we think about what to share.
Sure. So, I mean, just thinking about some things that we shared with Buckeye, I mean, there are just day-to-day activities and events that happen all the time. So let's think about some events from the fall. Buckeye has is a great military community, and the Veterans Day events were just, that's something that the community really looks forward to. The kids get so involved in, there's tons of activities. So ways that we were able to share that, quality photos of the Veterans Days assemblies. The kids were writing letters to veterans and sending them. And it's really easy to capture photos of kids and events, especially when they're just so heartwarming. So when we look at taking those types of photos, obviously we just want to focus on the good things that are happening.
Thanks, Rory. And at the same time, when we're thinking about the good things that are happening, sometimes I think in our organizations and in schools, we underestimate how just the importance of sharing day-to-day activities. The fact of the matter is our communities don't know necessarily what is happening. And we sometimes feel like, oh, I don't have a good picture to share. I don't have a good story to tell. But there is a role in sharing just the day-to-day activities. There's parent volunteer rolling out the popcorn machine for a basketball game and snapping a picture and saying, we are so grateful for our parent volunteers and how they help out. Here's another example of one of our parents engaging with our community, or if it's a staff member, giving their time. Social media is an incredible place to share appreciation for the things that you want to celebrate within your school district. And so that's another key component as we think about tips on social media. Not only do we need good share photos and videos because we know that people want to see themselves reflected, but what is the story or the post that goes with that? Jeff, what are some examples that you can think of in terms of sharing what could be the mundane or just things that are happening day to day?
Yeah, Phil, I mean, we certainly try to focus on the positive, but we have sent some things out in relation to some of the curricular work that's being done. When we have early release days and our students they're released, but our staff is staying back for professional development, we've been very purposeful in making certain that that information is in the community as well. Rory mentioned earlier that we are in the throes of hopefully looking to improve our facilities. And we've used social media very, very purposefully in line with that as well. With the survey that we completed, we had the community complete here this past few months. So we're looking for obviously things related to our kids, our students, our athletic events, things like that. But also, what about what the adults do? The curricular side. What about the other things that are going on in the community? Another item that we focused on just a smidge are the projects that are going on in the district from an operational perspective. A few weeks back, we had a little bit of a snowstorm blow through here, and we were able to stay open, but it took an awful lot of work, as some districts today dealt with, right? The work that our crews did between 3 o'clock and 7 o'clock in the morning just to make certain that we were safe for school that day, right? Well, we've sent some of that stuff out on social media, and we had great reaction to it. So, just the everyday things that go on in a school district, and they're so wide ranging, have been appreciated by the community, and we'll continue doing that.
Yeah, and the everyday things that go on in the day of the life of a superintendent. We we started in an effort to help the community get to know Jeff when he came on with Buckeye. We started a hashtag, "Where's Superintendent Stanton? What are you doing today?" Maybe you're meeting with a community group. Maybe you were reading to the kindergarten class. But what a fun way to share with the community, with parents, the things that an administrator does day to day. How you're interacting with the community and the students are sometimes things that go unseen, but social media is a good tool to be able to share those things so that your community can see them.
Yeah, Roy, if I can, I chuckled on that because that was clearly your idea, and you had to twist my arm a little bit. But I'm glad you did. And I mean, you sit back and you think, okay, I'm not that interesting, right? And who wants to follow what the superintendent's doing? And trust me, I'm not that interesting. But the response from that has been fun, right? Just and again, you know, superintendents, and maybe there's some superintendents on this webinar. Lord knows I'm learning how busy all of you are. But you can do those things easily, and the hashtag "Where's the superintendent" has been a fun one. So thank you.
Jeff, you briefly talked about this in terms of having some other individuals in your school district out there taking photos. But it is a challenge in any organization, in any school district, whether they're working with someone like the Impact Group, or whether they have a communications manager of their own, or maybe both, or they don't have anyone in that role. Sometimes getting the photos or video clips is a challenge. You have really set a tone for that, and that has been you've had a great impact. How are you doing that, and what is the process that you have established in terms of getting photos in order to share?
Yeah, well, thank you, Phil. Again, I appreciate the credit, but the credit's due to the people that are doing the work more so than me. But you know, all I did really was kind of wet the whistle, right? We talked about it administratively back in August, when, you know, first administrative meeting with the team here. We talked about our use of social media and what's going on in the building levels with the principals' newsletters and things like that. How do those tie into the district newsletters that are sent out? And then I just kind of challenged, how can we improve in this area, right? It's all about improvement. How can we improve? And then I watched, again, I mentioned a little bit earlier about watched our building principals and you know, our curriculum director particularly just really take it and run with it. Then we had to make certain that there was a place for all the pictures to go and the videos to go. And we had to make certain that the pictures of the kids that we're putting out there are the right pictures, and make certain we're not violating any privacy concerns from parents, all those type of things. So we were purposeful in that as well. So the pictures go to a holding folder, right? They are viewed by our curriculum director and ultimately approved by me. But that's been a nice thing that we've been able to do. But I think it's just been a matter of being purposeful on it from the start. And in all of our administrative meetings, our monthly meetings or bi-monthly meetings, we're making certain that we're touching on it a little bit. And then, you know, from my lens, just complimenting and reassuring people and reaffirming that what they're doing is good work, and the community's responding well to it.
Thank you. So we've talked about some things to share: celebrations of students and staff, day-to-day activities and events, a demonstration of gratitude or the values you want to promote, as well as good news and positive stories. Rory, let's flip to the other side. What are some things not to share on social media? Social media is not the place for everything. What are some things not to share?
Sure. So in terms of content, generally best to steer clear of, you know, major controversial topics. People typically go to social media because they're looking for some sort of escape or a break, and they want to see the light. You know, they want to see the good. So keeping it positive. So to flip that around, avoid the negative where you can. Another thing to avoid would be sharing. If you're going to focus on sharing images, try to stay away from low resolution images that might be hard to see. Most everyone has a phone with a really great quality camera. So even if you don't have a designated photography camera in your district or in your organization, your phone can be a great tool to be able to capture a high resolution image that'll come across really well on a screen. And then lastly, and Jeff touched on this a minute ago, photos of students who don't have a photo or video release would be something not to share for obvious reasons. And in Buckeye, we've set up a process where we're able to vet those photos before they go out. So that's a really important one to keep an eye on.
Those are great tips. Thank you. And in terms of the controversial topics, we'll just come back to that again. Sometimes you have a large following, and there might be something happening within a school district, and there's a desire to say, I want to clarify for everyone what is happening here. We would argue clarify in your emails to parents and community members and clarify on your website. Social media is not the place to have that. It can take on an entire life of its own so fast. Stick to the positive in your social media channels there. As we think about some of the other tips, let's talk about the key to consistency. How do you ensure consistency in Buckeye, and what are some strategies that you use to make sure that there is consistent messaging, or that it's not just a use of a little bit of social media and then your followers don't hear anything for a time? How often are you posting, and how do you make sure it's consistent?
Yeah, thanks, Phil. I think we've got pretty consistent here that we're updating pretty frequently. I think we went from not having a whole lot of images to now having a lot, right? I think we have a lot in our folders that can be used. But I want to make certain that the pictures and the topics are current, right? Been very purposeful with our principals and leaders about making certain that we're not still talking about Labor Day. We're not still talking about Halloween pictures, right? We want things to be updated as we go through the school year. And then just, again, it's a little bit repetitive, but what are our priorities? Our priorities are going to be focusing on what our students and what our teachers are doing, because that's pretty much what the community wants to see the most. And focusing on those areas and making certain that they're current seems to have been working for us. However, I also know that it's easy to not be current. It's not necessarily social media, but just yesterday in a meeting, we were looking at our individual principal pages and superintendent pages that are on our website, right? And we realized that some of those needed to be updated. So yesterday, I just sent a reminder out to everybody saying, hey, in addition to social media and the things that you're doing, let's not forget that the tools that we have on our district website also need to be updated frequently as well.
Great. So you mentioned at the very beginning engagement with students on social media. Another tip that we would share is to have fun with social media and don't only broadcast. So a lot of times it's very easy to fall into that. We're sharing information, and that's a primary purpose. But social media enables us the opportunity to engage. Are there ways that you have been able to do that in Buckeye or Rory? Any examples? And I'll be glad to chime in here as well.
Yeah, Phil, I've got a great one. Looking back way to the start of the school year, and this was such a fun one to see. First day of school. Who's not excited about the first day of school? We put a post out saying, share your first day photos with us. And we got so many responses, comments of parents that were so excited, sharing photos of their smiling kids out on the front porch with the backpacks on, ready to go to school. And that was just a really fun one for a lot of reasons. But from a strategic standpoint, all of those photos coming in became additional content for us. So that was a really fun one for us.
I know that one of the most fun activities I ever did was, as a superintendent, obviously we're very popular with students on snow days, and they engage a lot on social media, but you can also be, it can come on the verge of a controversial topic. But when there was a snow day, I would ask students to share their photos with me of them building a snow fort. And I would say, if anyone sends me a photo with them building a snow fort and actually reading one of their books from school in that snow fort, they'll be entered in a drawing for a Chipotle gift card. And so they all came flooding in. All of our students were out there, not all of our students, a lot of students were outside building snow forts and getting their books and taking their books and taking photos of themselves, reading their books in those snow forts. And so it was just a really fun opportunity to engage in a different way, and something that's not quite so serious, but still celebrates learning, celebrates the fact that we have this unique day. Let's take advantage of it. Let's have fun together. So there are really unique opportunities to think about but how can we have fun with social media? Making sure that we're not crossing over into the controversial topics, but asking for people to engage. And that's a great example, that first day example. Jeff, any others on Engage that you can think of?
Yeah, we have a project here called the Confetti Project. It's a reading project with our junior high school students where they are reading with community members. They could be senior citizens, they could be younger kids. And the Confetti Project's been going on for a couple of years at our junior high school. As community members have come in and have read with our junior high school students, we've been very purposeful in making certain we have that on social media, and the responses for all this stuff with our Confetti Project has been amazing. And Phil, you mentioned fun. That's a fun project. I actually have been reading with students. A lot of our central office staff members have been doing, our secretaries have been doing that. We have grandparents coming in and reading. It's really been fun. And to see that interaction on social media and the follow-up on that really has, I'm going to use the word fun. It's been fun.
Well, Jeff and Rory, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to share some of the tips, how you approach social media. To any of our participants, if you have additional questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. We'd be glad to talk to you about how we put social media, these tips into practice and more examples. But thank you so much for your engagement and for being models of what it means to utilize social media effectively to share your most important priorities. We appreciate it.